very good evening to each and every one of you, and welcome to this week's episode of Your Manchester. Hello.
Hello, my love. Are you okay?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well.
Good.
Yes.
We've got a lovely show lined up today, haven't we?
We have. We've got some nice people on, actually.
Some nice people as opposed to not nice people.
We have. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to actor, raconteur, and author Jim Whelan.
And there's a marvellous show coming to the Lowry very, very soon. It's called Murder in the Dark. And I got to speak to one of the actors called Johnny Green. That's in the show today. So it's exciting. And as well as that,
I'm going to be going out on a walk.
You're out and about. Where are you this week?
I'm on the Mosley Road in Ashton-under-Lyne, and some quite intriguing stories happen along there, you know.
I know, I love watching your stories, you know. They're very exciting. So many stories, and we're also having a little bit of a discussion today as well, aren't we?
We are going to be discussing the theatre.
The theatre, so that's all to come on today's show. Don't move a muscle.
Quite fit to bursting, isn't it?
It's a very full show.
Very. Now then, we were out last night, weren't we?
Wasn't it good? We went watching King and I last night over at the Lowry. Very good. Still one of my favourites.
It is, and they were very good cast and some lovely fabrics on that stage. We were quite envious, weren't we?
The opening cloth.
Yes.
We wanted that. I could see that with a good helmet. Yes. So for those people that don't know, what is the story of The King and I?
So it's based on a true story. The musical's from the book. And it's an English governess. It's the 1860s, and she goes out to become the kind of teacher for the King of Siam's a lot over 70 children, it says at one point. And so she's very busy. And it's
not as busy as he's been, though.
Well, no, that's true. And there's a culture clash, basically, isn't there, in how he wants his kingdom to be kind of more Western in its outlook, and she thinks he's not Western enough, basically.
Yeah, which got us thinking, didn't it? It got us quite... As we were walking out, there's a few people saying, is this allowed to be anymore? As if like they were ridiculing, but they weren't ridiculing, were they?
No, I mean, I think that this comes through in a lot of musicals of an age, really. And it is a story of this clash of cultures anyway.
Yeah.
But I think probably the most uncomfortable bit is in the second half when the children perform a play for visiting English dignitaries. Yeah. And it is Uncle Tom's Cabin, which in itself is...
Something I thought people would hang on more would be the fact that one of the characters has actually been brought in as a slave to the king.
There is that. And I was thinking, actually, last night, in the last 5 minutes, you have the death of the king, which you didn't notice.
No.
And... But there we are. That's the whole point. But it also finishes with the young prince kind of becoming king.
Yes.
We have the return of the girl that is a slave, and she is then just put back in as a slave.
Yeah.
Nothing happens to her.
No.
But also the king, the new young king, the first thing he does is to abolish their bowing towards the king and replaces it with the Western version, as if that is a better solution. Yeah. And I thought, actually... For me, that last few minutes was the uncomfortable bit. Would you cut that if you were directed it today?
Should things be cut, though? I mean, it is an old film. It is an old musical. When did it first come out? 1956, I think it was.
Yeah. Well, things are cut, aren't they?
But are they cut for the right reasons?
Well, I think that's it. You've got to view it in context of the age. And I guess if you're coming out, as long as you're coming out asking these questions and discussing it like we were, and lots of people were. Yeah. We were in a very long queue in the car park as usual, and it gives you time to discuss the show with people. I think that's fine. You're not just accepting it, are you?
There's quite a few musicals, though, isn't there, that have been, that perhaps when they first came out were okay, but now I suppose with woken eyes... Are they allowed to be? Should they be?
Well, they should, but it's like a few weeks ago we went to see My Fair Lady, and I mean that's pretty. I mean, again, it's a girl taken off the streets to be. It's like the betterment of people who know better, isn't it? Yeah, is often a theme in these things.
I have a train of thought on this. Entertainment is there to entertain.
Yes,
and I think you should make a clear decision whether you're entertaining or educating.
Yes.
And if you're entertaining, then I feel that part of your entertainment is to kind of say the points that are important.
Yes.
Maybe not offend or ridicule, but kind of get the story out so that everybody. How do you learn about history without?
Yes.
Without touching on points that perhaps are going to upset you.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's stories from different ages. I mean, today you have more stories that tackle, say, homosexual equality and non-binary and all the rest of it. You've had Rent and shows like that. You've had Kinky Boots, which has been about industrial uprising. There's lots of shows that take on topics like that. So you can entertain and educate, can't you? We do it on this show.
Well, we'll try. But will there become a time? You mentioned Rent there. I mean, that's a very sensitive subject. Will there come a time in, say, 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years, where that'll be kind of frowned on and perhaps not be the show to do?
Hopefully, it will be a historical thing. But it's all about, to come off the musical thing, we've had this thing with the drama about the post office.
Oh, gosh.
And in actual fact, which is horrific, that story's been out there for many years. Why did it take a drama
from ITV
to do it? And I think it's because it turned it into a human interest story. It was about the people, not about the computers.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of journalists that were covering it, such as, Private Eye and stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until, like you say, it came into ITV's schedule that it became something.
Yeah.
And has now become a big kickoff.
Well, it showed us the people. And I think that's perhaps the difference in a musical. If you're invested in the story of the person's struggle, then that is perhaps the difference.
Yeah. Other musicals that perhaps shouldn't be seen anymore. I mean, there's one.
I'm not sure they shouldn't be seen, but go on.
Well, there is. Is there? I mean, you talk about the Al Jolson story.
Yes.
Could you see that on stage again anytime soon?
Well, that is a story about a person performing, isn't it? Now, we wouldn't want that type of performance today.
No.
But do we necessarily not want to know the story of that was an acceptable type of performance, blackface performance, and why? Yeah. And then that leads into why it's not today.
Could we actually... This is what I'm saying. Could you actually take money off people for tickets to take them into a show that perhaps is too sensitive a subject these days?
Well, the Book of Mormon manages to take a lot of money.
I find the real story plus the actual stage show is pure comedy, to be honest.
Well, it is, but some people would be highly offended by what takes place in that show.
Jesus Christ Superstar.
Absolutely.
We discussed that. Should that be on there?
I remember, not musical, I remember booking into a theatre. It was the Reduced Shakespeare Company who did the Bible in like 90 minutes. And we were picketed by a church for that.
Well, Jesus Christ Superstar definitely was when it first came out.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's so many... I was thinking about this today as I was having my hair set. I was thinking there's so many topics these days that if you started really delving in, trigger warnings before shows, should these be a thing?
Well, you now get warnings for all kinds of things during the show, don't you? From explosives to various things. But yeah, I mean, look at South Pacific.
Yeah.
With its storyline there. I mean, there's a lot of brutal storylines in musicals, but then they tend to be human struggles.
And I think they come across sometimes a little bit softer as well because you have the enhancement of a musical and a medley around them.
Well, that's right. I mean, look at Oliver.
Yes.
Which is seen as quite a cheery musical, but actually, again, it's quite brutal.
It's very brutal.
With the relationship between both sides and all that. And all those kids, stealing and yet, and then you've got Jewish with Fagin as well.
So should live performance musicals be censored is what we're asking. We'd like to know your point of view on this. So drop us a little message and let us know your thoughts on this. Yay or nay for you, censoring live shows?
Generally nay, but I'm sure there will be some examples where I would say yay.
I find it a very, very grey area. The more that I've thought about it with knowing that this conversation was coming up, it's a very tricky subject.
It is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, Sound of Music.
Well, absolutely. And then on the opposite side to that, the producers.
Yes. And then also, here's a little one for you, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Well, that's been in Panther, that's always a difficult one now. But yes.
Tricky. Let us know your thoughts. Get in contact with us and we'll revisit this in a week or so. Now listen, places you like to revisit. You like to get out and about, don't you?
I do. I like that. You wouldn't think it the size of me, but mind you, you walked to the Lowry last night. I know. So we're doing our best. So we're trying to lose weight, aren't we? But yes, I've been for a walk in Ashton-under-Lyne in the borough of Tameside along Mosley Road and uncovered a few odd stories.
Well, welcome to this week's walk. Last time we finished our walk in Ashton-under-Lyne at the beautiful Portland Basin, which was a Coronation Street filming location. We start this week on the other side of Ashton-under-Lyne in Tameside at Tameside Hospital on Mosley Road. There is a bit of a Corrie connection. It's been used for filming now and again, primarily when evil barmaid Tanya Pooley rang up Natalie pretending to be Leeds Hospital and telling her that her son had been critically injured and was fighting for his life. Natalie disappeared at short notice off to Leeds Hospital and found out that actually it was a lie. Well, actually those scenes were filmed here at Tameside Hospital. I told you it was a thin link, but anyway, the hospital has been used on TV screens for lots of different filming. But we're going to go out of the hospital grounds and on to Mosley Road, where there are just one or two things along the road that have a curious tale to tell. So just up Mosley Road, up from the hospital, is this old gateway. There's only the front wall and the gateway left. Behind it is a housing estate known as the Ladysmith Estate. And in fact, this was the site of the Ladysmith Barracks. So in the late 1830s and 1840s, there were lots of skirmishes with what was known as the Chartist movement, the Chartist riots in and around Manchester city centre. And so barracks were set up, this being the main one on Mosley Road. 2 regiments were based here, and they would be taken in to quell uprisings. And in fact, the barracks were used from the 1840s through until 1958. They were renamed the Ladysmith Barracks. They were originally the Wellington Barracks, renamed the Ladysmith because of the siege of Ladysmith, which was part of the Boer War. Now, right across is a restaurant pub called the Heroes of Waterloo, which also reflects one of the battles that the soldiers here were involved in. Now, the Mosley Road itself and the run down to what is now Stamford Park was also known as the red light district of the town here, because ladies of the night would come along and offer their services to the soldiers, and equally it wasn't uncommon, if you read the court records, for some of the soldiers to go out and try and make some extra money too. Now, just down the road a little bit is something else that's worth a stop. A bit further down Mosley Road now. Behind me is what used to be a pub, the Odd Whim, and it got its name because of a man called John Rowe. He was born near Bradford. He suffered an accident in the early 19th century. He felt that he could hear voices and he was given instructions from a greater being to go round and spread Christianity around the northwest. He ended up here in Ashton-under-Lyne, declared it as the New Jerusalem, and he built walls around the town, and one of the gateways was here on the Mosley Road. Hence the pub being called the Odd Whim in later years. He gave speeches, he carried out all kinds of religious services, and he asked people to bring forward their daughters as virgins. In fact, you might remember there's a film starring Jonathan Pryce called John Rowe's Virgins. And, well, unfortunately, he declared that one of these virgins was to have a boy, second coming, and she gave birth to a girl, and eventually he was chased out of town. Where he went to is to Australia, where he created the Christian Israelite Church, which was something he'd done here as well. So Ashton-under-Lyne did not become the New Jerusalem, but his church still exists and still runs today. So we'll have a wander a bit further down Mosley Road. We're going back in the direction of the hospital, and I want to show you one last tale. Well, we end the walk a little bit off Mosley Road. Very noisy along there. We come back down to almost near Tameside Hospital. In fact, right opposite the hospital is the beautiful Stamford Park. Well worth a walk in its own right, perhaps in a future episode. One of the people behind the creation of this park was the local Stalybridge councillor, and he was called Robert Stanley. Well, he became Robert Rashid Stanley. He was born in Cardiff, and he was sent to Ashton-under-Lyne as an apprentice for his uncle's shop. His uncle was a Christian Israelite, that religion from John Rowe, and Robert Stanley became one and married into it as well. Later, he would become a local councillor. At the age of 19, he opened his own tea import, export and retail business. He became a Justice of the Peace, a local councillor, and he owned the New Inn pub on Mosley Road. He was responsible for a lot of improvements in the area. And then at the age of 69, late Victorian period, he suddenly sold the pub, cashed everything in, and he converted to become a Muslim. And he defended the Ottoman Empire, which was very controversial in its day. Local councillor, sort of pillar of the community involved in the local religion, suddenly converting to another religion was seen as quite a scandal. He died in 1911, and in recent years, his descendants have uncovered the full story and produced it in a book by Christine Longdon, and well worth a read. So we finish our walk here in Stamford Park. Now, last week we had Kathy Staff. We had a Coronation Street and a Last of the Summer Wine connection. Well, we started with Corrie connection, yes, tenuous, and we finished with the Last of the Summer Wine connection, because just a couple of streets away from here was the family home of Mr. Brian Wilde. You might remember he played the gentle Mr. Barraclough in Porridge. Well, he also played Foggy, of course, in Last of the Summer Wine. So we finish our walk here in the beautiful Stamford Park, and I'll see you next time.
Fabulous walk there from our Mark. Now, of course, earlier on we were talking about musicals, and musicals perhaps are a bit, should you not? One of them that we discussed a few weeks ago, actually, was the Rocky Horror Show.
We would like, if we may, to take you on a strange journey. To mark the return of Richard O'Brien's The Rocky Horror Show to the Manchester Opera House, Canvas will be hosting a specially themed bottomless brunch on Saturday 27th of January, featuring a sensational live tribute to the outrageous musical phenomenon. Enjoy a tasty brunch provided by Canvas social partners, Block Steak Shop and bottomless drinks for 90 minutes, followed by live performances of the iconic Rocky Horror Show songbook. Dressing up and audience participation is encouraged. Don't dream it, be it. Time is fleeting and places for brunch are strictly limited. But don't worry, you can also join us later for the floor show, and we'll do the time warp again. Book your tickets for the Rocky Horror Bottomless Brunch Show at thecanvasvenues.com.
Well, I've got a lovely guest joining us now down the line from the South Coast. Actor, raconteur, cruise ship speaker and author. And that is Jim Whelan. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. I have read your fantastic book, Imposter, and you're now talking about your life aboard cruise ships, aren't you?
Yes, I am. And it all started by pure luck when I was playing badminton down here. Believe it or not, I still play even at my advanced age. And a man who I only knew from just playing badminton, nothing else, just a social friend, said to me one day, "I've just seen you on Crown Court, 1972. I said, "You can't have done. I've never seen that." He said, "I have. I'll send it to you." And he sent me the clip. And the following week, he said to me, "I've just seen you on Liver Birds twice, 1973 and 1974. I'll send it to you." And I said, "Well, all right then." And this was just purely social. And over the next 6 months, he sent me maybe 50 clips. I've got a dozen of Coronation Street. I've got things from Last of the Summer Wine, in which I played 4 different characters, Heartbeat, and many, many more, including stories and clips of me with people like Ray Winston and Robert Carlyle and lots of those people. And then another friend who happened to be a speaker on cruise ships saw these and said to me, "You want to use those on cruise ships?" So I applied and he told me exactly what to do. So simply because I met those 2 people, I became a cruise ship speaker, and I auditioned down in Southampton, even at my age, and they liked it. And they said, "Okay, we'll give you a cruise." So I do a cruise and I take Helen with me, and we've done 10 in the last 2 years. So it's lovely. In a way, it's a win-win. I get paid expenses, not life-changing amounts, but it's sheer enjoyment. And if we're to go away like now in the middle of winter, which is every possibility, we're not using heat and electricity and power at home. We're not spending 100 quid a week in Sainsbury's and Aldi and everywhere else. So it's a win-win, and I do enjoy it. And they have the most amazing, wonderful facilities. Now, it's not a free ride because you have to have a minimum of 6 one-hour talks. And I practiced and rehearsed them until I got in my bedroom, until I got them right. And so I play them, and people seem to enjoy it. They enjoy the nostalgia bit, you know, and I can't say I don't enjoy it, because I do. So that's what I mainly do.
Brilliant. And I think that nostalgia thing, because as you've highlighted there, you were in an awful lot of shows. You're still working. I know you've been filming this week up here in Manchester for Brassic. You're still working, but you've been in so many classic shows. I know, you know, you went into the business through singing, and then you ended up in an old time music hall at the beloved Oldham Coliseum. So who were the sort of people you worked with at the Coliseum?
Well, my agent at the time was Zena Sharp, a lovely lady, and she was very clever. I asked her to come and see me in an amateur show at Altrincham Garrick, and she came and she said, "I'll take you on, darling, when you get your equity card." I got my equity card by working as a club singer. I was a paid artist, so I could take that contract. I got down to equity, and they made me a temporary member. And Zena said, "All right, darling, I'll take you on." And she put me in. My first show was Family at War. I was an extra. She said, "Darling, you'll have to be an extra because you have no experience." So I was a background artist and extra for 5 years. And then gradually I got a few little parts with lines, and that's how it started. And she phoned me one day and said, "Darling, Oldham Rep have a bit of a problem. Their buttons in the pantomime," we're talking 1973, I think now, has just landed a television series. And the powers that be at that time, if you got a telly, that was what you did. And he had to be away for a fortnight. So she said, "Would you like to go up and play buttons for them for a couple of weeks?" I thought, why not? So I went to Oldham Rep, and the director was John Jardine, a very good friend who's still knocking about, and I know you're a very good friend of his. Yeah. He directed the panto. He was the artistic director. Roy Barraclough played the Dame and also helped with the directing and so on. I met Barbara Knox, who was Barbara Mullaney at the time. She was a member of the company. I met a lovely chap called Peter Dudley, who went on to Coronation Street to play one of the Bert Tilsley, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I absolutely adored the pantomime, and I didn't want to give it up after 2 weeks. But the star, Alan Moore, who I'm still in kind of contact with, came back. So I was gone. But John Jardine, bless him, and it's the first time it's ever happened to me, made a curtain speech afterwards and said, everyone was around. And he said, "I just want to thank Jim for coming along and stepping in and helping us out. And we will be seeing more of him." And off I went back to clubs. And, well, I was doing small parts by now. And I thought, well, that's the end of that. But it wasn't. John was true to his word. And the next year he booked me as buttons or whatever it was in my own right. And so I had a very good start through helping them out. And that's how I started at Oldham. And I still have the fondest of memories. And I think it's an absolute scandal that such a facility should be allowed to go, because so many people started there. Dora Bryan played there, Bernard Cribbins, a lot of lovely people, and Roy Barraclough, who was very funny, as you know, and very mischievous. And I had, it was a joy, and I'll always retain happy memories of it. And I've been back dozens and dozens of times because I lived locally for many years, and I think it's a great shame that it's gone, but I've nothing but happy memories there.
It is indeed. So you worked with a lot of Corrie people. You then went into Coronation Street, and I know you played lots of different parts. You ended up really as a sort of semi-regular vicar, didn't you? And you were there for some big stuff. A lot of people will be watching the classic Coronation Streets in the afternoon. So, you had to deal with Tracy bursting into the church and various funerals and things, didn't you?
That's right. I became a recurring character, which is not regular. Of course, as you know, recurring means just called upon when needed, but at least then you didn't have to audition. And I was the recurring vicar for maybe 5 years at a particular church. And the biggest one I ever did was Steve and Karen's wedding, when Tracy burst in and denounced Steve as the father of her child. And so the wedding, everything went off and it went haywire. And in the end, they did decide they wanted to get married. So they came back to the vicar and said, "Oh, sorry about that. We do want to get married." But the vicar didn't like it. He said, "Now, just a minute. You can't come along here and think you can just do anything you like. Marriage is a serious subject and must be treated as such." But they talked him into it. It's a soap. And so I married them. But it was in an empty church, because all the congregation were getting drunk over at the reception, you see, because of what had gone on. So that, and I got a message from Suran Jones, who, of course, was the star of that, along with Simon, who played Steve, about 3 months later, through John Thompson, the actor. And he said, "Oh, Suran knows I'm working with you, and she sent you a little message to say that episode of Corrie was watched by 17 million people at the time. It was the biggest non-sport program of the year. 17 million. What would they give for that?"
Amazing, is it?
Yeah.
Amazing. So you were the vicar in that. I must also, before we run out of time, because so many people know you from the royal family as well. And again, you had your clerical colour on, didn't you?
I did. And my agent phoned me and said, "Darling, stay by the phone. You're going to get a call from Caroline Aherne." And 10 minutes later, the phone rang and it was Caroline. She said, "Oh, Jim, I'm sorry to do this to you, but we like the look of your picture, but we want to know, can you do an Irish accent? So do something Irish." So I went into a bit of my cabaret act, which at that time I could tell Irish jokes. You couldn't do it now. And I had a decent Irish accent because all my family were first generation immigrant Irish. So and she said, "Well, you've got the job." And I spent a fortnight filming the royal family, and I think it's the best ever episode that's been. It was called The Queen of Sheba, and it's the one where Nana died, and it was wonderful. And the final bit, which only features me very, very briefly, I show it because it shows Caroline's brilliance because of the little touches she put in. She was the boss. She really directed, although there was a famous director who went on to direct Succession and things like that. But Caroline was the boss. So it was lovely to be in that episode, even though I have to say most of my dialogue was cut.
Right, brilliant. Now, I must point people to your book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It says here, a searing indictment of the acting profession, an explosive expose of the seedy side of the TV business. It is not. And in fact, but what it really is, and what I loved about it, is it's the story of a jobbing actor. It is available. It's called Imposter by Jim Wheeler, and it is available through Amazon and all the usual sources. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim. It's been a great pleasure.
A pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, and the best of luck up there. I hope it's not too cold.
A spine-chilling and psychological thriller coming your way to the Lowry from the 23rd to the 27th of this month. It's going to be fantastic, and it's called Murder in the Dark. Joining us now is one of the cast members. This is, of course, Mr. Johnny Green. We're going to cut straight to the chase here, Johnny. How is it being in this wonderful, wonderful play? Tell us all about it. What's it all about?
It's really good. It's a lot of fun. It's a thriller about a family who sort of get trapped on a farm in a cottage on New Year's Eve. Lots of different family dynamics going on, people not liking each other, lots of family drama, and then just sort of chaos descends upon them, and then it leads to sort of an hour and a half of fun, but also a lot of jumps. Audience don't know whether they're coming or going. It's a really exciting show, to be honest.
So would you describe it as something scary for the audience then?
I would describe it, yeah, definitely scary, but I think more I'd go down the thriller route. It's got a bit of edge of the seat kind of stuff, and I think it's done in a way where It's not just a couple of bangs going off to make people jump. There's an emotional journey with it as well, and yeah, it's kind of covers a lot of boxes.
Yeah, well, there seems to be a bit of a trend for these type of shows, these thrillers at the moment. Why do you think people are suddenly interested in coming watching a show classed as a thriller?
I was talking about this earlier. I'm not sure. I think that people love that idea of going to the theatre and kind of having to work something out for themselves, and that I was actually talking about earlier about the Traitors and why that's so big, because obviously it's come back recently. I love it, and that element of being able to sit there and having to work it out a bit yourself and kind of assessing different people and your mind going off with, oh, do you know what, that it could be them doing that, or do you know what I mean? I think that's really entertaining and just and really exciting to kind of go to the theatre and watch.
So what's your part in this then, Johnny?
So I play the son of a kind of the main character. So my dad in the show has been driving a car with me, my uncle, my mum. In it, the four of us crash, or the five of us crash, because my dad's girlfriend's there as well. Then we have to stay in this cottage for the night. We can't get back to London. And then my sort of character has a lot of resentment towards his dad. They don't have a great relationship. And it means that being in that environment where they can't leave leads to some really interesting scenes, and obviously with the chaos that descends upon them as well, with that sort of scary energy brought up by Mrs. Bateman, who owns the house that they have to stay in. So yeah, it's chaotic.
Now, at the moment, of course, we can catch you in the TV programme Count Abdullah. I mean, that's fantastic. But you've also been involved in lots more, Troubled Blood, and of course, a personal favourite of mine, It's a Sin.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like being involved within that?
I am so proud to have been involved in that show. I remember I got the script through for that, like, I don't know, a month or so before I was due to film, and I was actually on a flight, and I read all 5 episodes on the flight, and I was bawling. And I remember the air hostess just walked down the aisle and just handed me a pack of tissues and just walked on. I was honestly like a mess. And then I filmed. I remember going on the set, and there was such a good energy between that main cast. And I was like, this really feels like something. And Ollie Alexander, I've said this before, was as a lead in a show like that. I think it's so important that I think it can live and die by how the lead is, and he was so lovely to every single person on that set, and just it was the best environment to work in. And I just remember when it finally did come out, thinking, oh, I hope I don't let this whole thing down, because I felt so much, I feel permanently indebted to Russell for him letting me be a part of that, because it was a really special show.
And of course, you mention leads and how important the leads are in these shows and TV programs. But I mean, you've been blessed with working with one of the nicest guys, it appears, on the stage. Like, of course, Mr. Tom Chambers. I mean, what's it like working with him?
Oh God! But imagine I said he was horrendous. Now, no, he's absolutely, he's lovely. He's lovely. I really got on with him. Like, I consider him like a proper mate now, and he is so generous, so kind. And he'd do anything for you. He's a really lovely, lovely man, and a wonderful actor as well. But a great sort of lead to bounce off, similar to Ollie actually in that regard, of just holds us all together and really kind of captains the side, and yeah, he's lovely.
And your CV seems to be growing and growing. Every time we kind of hear you're in something, there's another few credits on that CV. Is there anything that you've not done that perhaps you would like to get involved with?
Oh, there's so much stuff that I'd love to do, but I always say it's the lap of the gods. Like, I really try and hide away from going, oh, I'd love to do this or that. Or there's so many things I'd love to do, but quite often it's about what's out there and what you can get seen for. I think anything that's sort of northern. I mean, I'm really proud of where I'm from, so whenever I get the opportunity to kind of work in something up north or about the north, I love that.
And finally, in just 3 words, why should people come and watch Murder in the Dark?
Because it's a lot of fun. It really is. I think it keeps you on the edge of your seat. I think there's some great performances in it by Tom and Susie Blake, who we've not even talked about, who is an amazing actor. Has worked in some unbelievable stuff. Worked with Victoria Ward, was amazing in Coronation Street. Like, she's just a brilliant stage actor, and her performance in this is really amazing. But it's a fun night out at the theatre, and it'll get you talking. And I think that's one thing that I've taken away from the shows we've done when I've had people in. It's been a recurring theme of when people come out, there's a lot to talk about and unpick. And for that reason, I think it's a really strong piece of theatre and something that people should come down and watch. And we're at the Lowry as well, which the Lowry's gorgeous.
Well, this is coming to us from the 23rd to the 27th of this month over at the Lowry. It's going to be fantastic. Everybody check this one out. For now, though, Johnny, thank you so much for your time today.
Lovely to meet you.
Well, my goodness, what a fun-packed show it's been. That was a lovely interview with me, dear.
He's just quite fascinating. It's going to be good, that Murder in the Dark, you know.
It is Susie Blake's in it, isn't she?
Lots of thrillers at the moment. Yeah, of course, yeah. Corrie.
Now,
speaking of Corrie, next week,
yes,
we are back at the old Granada Studios.
The Granada Studios.
The Granada Studios. Let's just call it the Granada Studios.
Yes.
And this time, we looked at the dressing rooms last time we were there. This time, we are going actually onto the floor where I believe all the sets were.
Yeah, that's right. And that's now been turned into something very different.
Very different. It's called Chaos Carts. And we're going to be down there looking at the technology. Because this technology is absolutely fantastic. It makes Chaos Carts absolutely fantastic. So that's coming up as well.
You are. The insurance won't cover for me. Well, we have to get out and about them. And in fact, talking about the episode last week when we had our exclusive look around the studios in the dressing rooms and everything, if you didn't see it, it is still on YouTube and all our social. It was a record-breaking episode.
It was indeed.
It was. So thank you so much.
So many people got in touch with us.
I know. We've never had such a big reaction.
And we then, as we always do, we split the episode into several parts for TikTok, for Instagram, all the different socials.
Yeah.
TikTok seemed to explode.
Yes, is that the same as Tickery Talk?
Nowhere near.
Oh.
It was. We had so many views on it. It was crazy. People seemed to love the fact that it wasn't originally going to be called Coronation Street. So
absolutely.
Big pat on the back to you.
Thank you, love. No, we enjoyed filming it as well. So thank you so much for tuning into Your Manchester, because we're now having thousands and thousands of viewers every week, and on social media and the podcast that goes out every Sunday as well. So we thank you for your support. And in fact, you may know things about Greater Manchester that we don't know. I mean, we get where Vaseline won't, but there will be places, museums, organisations, charities, good causes that we would love to cover on the show.
Absolutely. And if you do have anything that's going on, get in contact with us. It's as simple as that. Contact us at yourmcr.com and we will endeavour to come and find out as much as you need us to about your plight.
It's your show.
It's your show.
After all.
Every story counts.
And young Michael is back next week.
He is indeed. He's coming back. We're going to the go-karts. Like I say, I feel like a Metro pineapple.
Well, there we are.
Yeah.
And I'll be walking through Staley Bridge.
Till then, thanks for watching this week's episode of
Your Manchester.